Good day, one and all. Welcome to the latest podcast. My name is Donato, and this is You, Me, and Sub 3, where we talk about all things running, activity, and all that type of fun stuff. And it's with great pleasure I've got an absolutely brilliant guest on, of part of a global phenomenon in running around the world. But you're probably wondering, why am I getting this wonderful guest on? Because the topic for me, and it's close to my heart, having had brought up a number of children and about keeping kids active. And I certainly believe getting kids outside and active is obviously a good thing. And we live in a society where childhood obesity is at an all-time high, and studies suggest too much television time may contribute to behaviour problems, poor grades, and even depression later in life. But are the physical and mental demands of long-distance running safe for children? At what age is competition appropriate, and what do parents need to keep in mind? These are the questions that are often brought out. So when I saw this guest on social media talking about activity and children, without further ado, I just want to introduce none other than the Chief Operating Officer of Parkrun Global. That's Tom Williams. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you very much, Donato.
It's I tell you, it's an absolute delight. I haven't done a number of park runs. It's almost like you're one of my heroes, and park runs that goes on there. It's brilliant, and I think it's fantastic. And obviously we're not here to talk about parkrun specifically. We're here to talk about getting kids active and more active, and the science behind it, because I did see on the social media a number of people, and there was sort of both sides of the argument when you did tweet about getting kids being active. And obviously there's people who have concerns, and then there's the other extreme where I've seen instances where parents throw their children unless they vomit at the end of a race. They haven't tried hard enough. And yes, so it's getting a happy balance on that.
Absolutely.
But if you want to give the listeners, viewers, a bit of a background about yourself, Tom, not just in terms of the parkrun, but also your sports science background.
Yeah, I'd be delighted. So I think two things to kick off. One, I'm definitely not a medical doctor, so I'm definitely not kind of making any advice for any specific individuals based on being anything to do with the medical profession. And I'm also not a preachy parent. I've got an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and we can talk about them and their engagement in physical activity. But there's nothing worse than a parent is there that says, I'm doing everything right and you're doing everything wrong. So I definitely don't want to come across like that. I did a degree, so I've been involved in sport and physical activity and so on for in the region of 25 years. I started my degree in sport and exercise, in fact, human biology, exercise and health, at Oxford Brookes University. I started that in 1996. And then I went on to do a master's degree in sport and exercise science at Leeds Metropolitan University. And then I went on to become a lecturer in sport and exercise science at the University of Leeds, and I did that from 2006 to 2010. During that time, I also worked as a personal trainer at a big multinational fitness chain, and I became a master trainer and trained personal trainers. And I also worked a little bit in elite sports. I worked with some Premier League football teams, Championship football teams, with some rugby teams, and so on. And so I've got a pretty decent, I'd say I'm kind of a jack of all trades, and now I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Parkrun Global. So I oversee all of our operations of our global, what we call footprint of events, I guess. And we've got nearly 2,100 events with 6.6 million people registered across 21 countries, with about 400,000 people a week taking part from the age of 4 to 104. So I wouldn't call myself necessarily a real specialist in any specific area, but I've got 25 years of experience across a pretty wide range of physical activity and health.
Fantastic. I would put you in that you know what you're talking about in your area of expertise.
I hope so.
That's absolutely brilliant. So in terms of the topic of getting kids active, because as before we came in, I was talking about with my children, and obviously you've got 2 young ones, and I vividly remember when my kids were around the age of yours, but they were always active. I mean, even when we were kids, we always wanted to get out and about. And for me, back in the 60s and 70s, that's all we did. Obviously, we didn't have Nintendos and Game Boys and all that kind of things to keep us inside. Movies, Netflix, Amazon, there was none of that. So we entertained ourselves by getting out and about. How, in terms of for children, is it good getting them out from an early age? Do we just let them go and do their own thing? Should it be monitored in any way?
When we were kids, that's
Just
what
do
happened,
their
wasn't
thing.
it? If it was
How
a
do you
nice day,
stress?
we left the house at 10 in the morning and we came back when it got dark, or we left the house at 8 in the morning, came back when it got dark. But we don't want to sound like a couple of old blokes going,
No.
it was good when in our day. Do you know what I mean?
Well, back in
But
my day,
look, I
back in the
think,
50s.
yeah, back in black and white. Look, I think there's an overriding principle here, and I think having observed physical activity and health guidance and behaviour for a long time, I think one of the big issues we have, or there's a number of big issues, but one of the big issues is that, and our conversation started around is running good for children or not. One of the issues we have is that in order to make unhealthy changes to behavioral guidance and to what we do, it seems like we don't need any evidence at all. So for a soft drinks company, for example, to start selling sugar-laden, caffeine-laden drinks to children, they don't need any evidence. Nobody's saying to them when they start selling whatever it might be, well, hang on a minute, where's the long-term evidence for that? And again and again and again, we see examples of poor health, like the baddies, as it were, not having to justify why they're doing what they're doing. Yet at the same time, the goodies, the people like us that want to get people active and healthy and to eat well and live well, we seem to have to justify ourselves all the time in terms of, it's remarkable when you think about, if you stop to think, okay, we're having to actually try and prove that running, something we've done since human beings began, is not bad for us. And when you stop to think about that, you think, well, hang on a minute, well, why is it not the other way around? Why are people who are advocating not doing things having to demonstrate that not doing something is good for them? So it's very odd. So I think the way we think about it is entirely the wrong way around, that it disadvantages the good team over the bad team. I think also we hear a lot of stuff that is repeated and repeated and repeated. Oh, it's bad for the knees. And if it's repeated enough, people believe it.
I know.
And it's very rare that people, you hear people say, well, hang on a minute, is that true? Is that right? So you're saying X, you're adamant, and I know loads of experts have told you that, and I know you've read it in the paper, and I know you've seen it on the internet, and I know you've done this. But have you ever thought about it? Have you ever kind of just paused and gone, hang on a minute? And so when we go back into using Parkrun as an example, when we started Parkrun in 2007, there was this unevidenced, unthought through, unjustifiable position that running, in our case, 5 kilometers, that running 5 kilometers is bad for children. And there was a whole load of guidance, probably if you'd looked on the UKA website or the IAAF website, it might even still be there, guidance around children shouldn't be running 5K. And so, I came from I was an Ironman triathlete competing at fairly decent amateur standard and training a lot. So was my wife, but actually we came from a non-establishment background. So I had quite a questioning background of, hang on a minute, is that right? I won't really believe anything unless it's demonstrably true. And so I got involved in Parkrun in 2007. In fact, did I say we started in 2007? We started in 2004. I got involved in 2007, and I started working for Parkrun in late 2010, early 2011. And as we were getting bigger, of course, when we were small, nobody took any notice of us. As we got bigger, people started saying, hang on a minute, children shouldn't be running 5K. And I'd say, oh, okay, fantastic. I'm not aware of any evidence that that's the case. And we have run since human beings began. I ran loads when I'm a kid. I'm fine. My dad ran loads. Yeah, we're born with, that's what we do. I'm more than happy to accept that if you could provide some evidence. And remarkably, when you actually said to people, and you're not being confrontational, we're not having an argument, we're not shouting, you're just saying, yeah, that's great. The second you can provide some evidence for me, because I'm in my ignorance, I'm not aware of any, the second you can provide evidence for me that children running any distance, feel free to provide it for 100-mile races, whatever you like, that any distance, then we can move forwards. But until that point, I'm not prepared to accept a regulation that stops children participating in one of the most natural forms of physical activity we can possibly imagine, based on actually zero evidence other than people repeating it again and again and again, and then people believing it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm totally on board with that, Tom. I understand. I often call it the vociferous minority, where you just get a handful of people who keep saying it and keep saying it and keep saying it. And I think I once tweeted, and a few people shouted me down. It says, if a lot of people are saying something, it just means a lot of people are saying something. It doesn't prove anything.
Yeah.
It just means a lot of people are saying it.
That's exactly right. And I'm all for evidence-based decisions. I'm absolutely all for that. But actually, that it goes both ways, and I think there has to be an element of common sense. So despite my semi-scientific background, for me, common sense, is the first thing you should go to. And now I grew up. I spent a lot of in my early years. I spent a lot of time in Africa, running around literally with no shoes. So we lived in Tanzania for a few years when I was a small child. I didn't own a pair of shoes for a few years. I ran around all day long in the late 70s. And had a really, really active life. And of course, running around with no shoes all day long I'm perfectly fit and healthy now, and that's great. And I was fortunate enough to spend a number of years through my formative years, through my teenage years, accompanying my dad, who worked in the Rift Valley, and spent a lot of time with pretty traditional Maasai, not totally traditional Maasai, but pretty traditional, drinking milk and blood and living the lifestyle that they did, and being really, really active. And I've been fortunate enough to walk through the Rift Valley, just myself and a friend and some young Maasai lads when we were kids. And these communities were super active all day long. Way more than 5K, living naturally. And actually, when you think about it, we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of years of being active and being running, and everybody's fine. At the same time, we have this epidemic of inactivity that nobody argues is causing problems. I mean, that's the irony, is the same people saying children shouldn't run would also say that we've got this issue with inactivity. And the World Health Organization, who aren't always right, will say, and they will say, children aged 5 to 17 should accumulate 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity every single day. Now, the average 5-year-old walking and running 5K probably take them. My daughter did one when she was 6, and it took her 68 minutes, and she didn't run a step, so she was walking.
Yeah.
So that's not actually vigorous activity for her. She was walking and feeding the ducks.
Yeah.
There is no component of that is in any way demonstrably bad for anybody in any way. And so we don't necessarily need the science to know that's clearly bonkers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think the common sense, when you touch on that word common sense, and I think someone once told me there's nothing more uncommon now than common sense. And I think maybe we need to help people to get more in touch, to come away from the tech and the science and actually listen to themselves and listen to their body. And I love the comment from one of the ladies on your social media thing, where she said she had 2 children. One child loved it and the other one didn't. So I think I'll let the one who loves it carry on, and the one who didn't, maybe it's not for them. And then someone commented and says, heaven forbid, how dare you use common sense? And, so I think that the key message for those who are listening and watching is those with children, because I'm guessing a lot of people do, and maybe can be overprotective of their children, or we often hear cover them cotton wool. How can we help people overcome? Because if they keep hearing this thing, it's bad. How can we, as responsible adults who we know it's good, how can we help parents or guardians or aunts and uncles? Because sometimes the aunts and uncles want to take their nephews and nieces, but the parents say, oh no, it's not good for them. How can we help people to encourage to get them out? I mean, at the end of the day, I always say you don't have to run the 5K, you can just walk it. I mean, for me and my kids, we used to just walk everywhere. We didn't do any running. I've only took up running a few years ago, so they've grown up and gone. I think they're grateful that they don't leave me now that I'm running, because I don't think they may want to join in with the running, but they certainly would do a lot of walking. We're very active. How would you help to encourage those who want to get the kids more active?
Well, look, I think there's a couple of things, and one, and a really useful saying for me is that we shouldn't blame modern diseases on traditional behaviours. And so
Hmm.
when we're thinking about health behaviour in general, when we're looking at things that are modern illnesses, so that's the diseases associated with sedentary lifestyle, um, et cetera, et cetera. Sedentary lifestyle is a modern behavior, and that's a modern disease, whereas walking and running and being really really active all day is a traditional behavior that every single
Yes.
human being's done for thousands of years. And so I think there's this odd thing where we start to blame, like I say, traditional behaviors on modern diseases, and that's a good place to start mentally. I think really importantly for us, and in this context of advising parents, not wanting to sound like a preachy parent, but advising parents around the how to get kids physically active. I think the first thing is to start to understand what being physically active means, and I think there's a huge amount of misinformation out there, and I don't think it's helped
Yes.
necessarily by the kind of guidelines I mentioned a moment ago around an amount of time and an intensity of activity. So I think actually there's increasingly people are saying, well, hang on a minute, we shouldn't be saying elevate your heart rate for an amount of day. We shouldn't be saying for amount of time a day. We shouldn't be saying be vigorous or moderate or whatever it be. What we should be saying is we should be saying just move, just move,
Yeah.
get out and move and do a bit, do a bit more than you were. And being sedentary is not good for you. But actually, don't overthink it. Excuse me, sorry, don't I say?
That's
Don't
fine.
overthink it. Think about being active. So when we put that into the context of our children and getting them involved in parkrun, now there are a couple of things. One, 5K is a long way for a lot of kids. Now our two children, our daughter's 8, our son's 5. They're both very active. They've walked to nursery since they were 1.5 or 2, or whenever they could walk, and they've walked to school ever since then. Every day they're very active, but for them 5K is a bit too far. Their choice, not my choice. If they wanted to
Yeah.
do it, we'd
Yeah.
do it. I'm not stopping them doing it. They mostly, it's too far mentally, so they get bored and they don't hold their attention for that long. And other kids do, and that's fine. So my daughter's done one 5K park run, my son's done none, and they're not really interested in that, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Some kids, 4-year-olds, want to run fast every single week, and if they want to do that and they're happy doing it, enjoying it, that's absolutely fine. What we do for our engagement with running and park run for our family is at our local junior park run, which takes place on a Sunday at 9 a.m. in England and Wales, 9:30 in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and that's 2K. And children can do it on their own. So at 5K park run events, children under the age of 11 need to be accompanied, but at 2K events, they can do it on their own, which is actually really, really quite helpful because some children like a little bit of
Yeah.
independence, even when
Yeah.
they're very young. Like, leave me
Exactly.
alone, Dad. I want to go
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah.
So our rule, and this comes for our family, and this comes from, I think, a real understanding of what where the value is in physical activity and what physical activity means. And this is based on my kind of 25 years of thinking about it. The value is in moving and is being outdoors and is in being social. Now, everything else doesn't really matter. So for some people, they get a PB and they're really excited. For some people, walking to the park, having a cup of coffee, and not for the kids, and walking home
Yeah.
is a really, really good thing. And so understanding that, I don't know, 90% of the value comes from moving at any intensity, just moving, being outside, loads of research saying that being outside in nature is really good for you, and being social. And again, loads of research saying being social and active is good for you. So our rule for our kids is we go to junior park run every single Sunday. We go to the park and we never miss it. All 4 of us, my wife, myself, our 2 kids, we never miss it. However, they can run, they can walk, they can volunteer, they can pull out halfway, they can just mess around in the park, they can climb trees, they can sit in the cafe and have a tea cake, they can do whatever they like. The rule is we're outside and we're moving, and the moving can just be walking to the park. It's about half a mile from our house. Can just be
Yeah.
walking to the park
Yeah.
and back, but they're outside, they're moving, and they're social. And actually, sometimes our son or our daughter will say, "Oh, I want to go for a PB today." And they go for a PB. And sometimes they'll
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
"Would you run with me?" And we run with them. And sometimes they start and they pull out, and that's fine. And sometimes they don't want to do it. And I think by allowing them, and it works for us, and I'm not saying, this is just our experience as a family, by allowing them the total autonomy over whether you just turn up and sit in a tree with your mate and put the world to rights, or whether you turn up and you go for a PB in the rain, or whatever you want, by giving them that choice, I hope it gives them a really positive understanding of physical activity. Because unfortunately, a lot of guidelines would give you credit, as it were, if you're an adult, 5 times 30 minutes a day, of 5 times 30 minutes a week of vigorous physical activity. That would give you credit for going to a gym and 11 o'clock at night and sitting on a stationary bike. They shouldn't even be allowed to be called a stationary
bike. And not even pedaling it.
It's sitting on a stationary bike and raising your heart rate for half an hour. Now you would get, you would get credit for that. Yeah, you're not seeing your family, you're not seeing your friends, you're compromising sleep, you're not outside, you're not being social, you're not getting natural light. So yes, you're raising your heart rate for half an hour, but I would argue, and it's probably pretty decently arguable, that's making you less healthy. But it wouldn't give you credit, as it were, for walking to your local park, never raising your heart rate, chatting to your mates, having a tea cake in the cafe, being really, really social, being outside, feeling good, getting some fresh air and walking home. And actually, it's obvious if you stop and think about it, if you actually stop and go, let's actually think about this independently. What do we think? Well, clearly walking to the park with your family is a million times better than sitting on an exercise bike in a gym at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, and I think I would encourage people listening to think about those things, think about what they enjoy, think about what makes them smile. Are you smiling and laughing? If you're smiling and laughing, you're doing it right. And if you're not, you're probably doing it wrong. Accepting that sometimes you want to turn up and you might be a kid and this is fine, and you might be an adult and this is fine. You want to turn up and really get it on, and you really want to have a good old gurn, and you want to push yourself through a pain barrier, and you want to go for a PB, and that's fine if you're 4 or 104 or anything in between. But when you're thinking about how do we approach this, because the one thing we get is, yeah, but I see loads of kids crying at Parkrun. You don't see that many kids crying, actually. And
I see lots of I don't see any adults crying.
I see kids crying at school. I see kids crying because their parents are pushing them to do maths or geography. I see kids crying because, you know, my daughter really wants to play the piano every now and again, and she loves playing the piano. Every now and again, she can't get it right, and she cries, and it's a miserable experience. And I think there's, just because, you know, if I said to my kids, you just do whatever you want every single day, they would watch Peppa Pig and Paw Patrol, and the sun coming up to the sun coming down, and that's all they would do. And so there has to be, as a parent, an element of, you know what, I'm going to try and work out a combination of what's right for them, what they enjoy, and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we said to either of our children, you must parkrun every week, and you must do your best every week and run as fast as you can, they'd hate it and they'd be miserable. And the soonest possible moment they could stick 2 fingers up at us and never come back, they'd do that. I guarantee it.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. There's so much we can learn from children where it's just about the whole organic thing. And the way you were talking there, it was sort of almost not word for word, but I don't know if you ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about a particular town or village in the US that has the lowest heart attack rate in the whole country. And I'll just quickly summarize. When they went to the town village, it was nothing to do with exercise, nothing to do with this, that, or the other. The people there were all different shapes, sizes. It was exactly what you've said, where they're just out and about, being active, doing their own thing, enjoying company, enjoying food, enjoying drink, and doing what they feel to do. So I think, like what you say, if you give the children the freedom to do what they want, obviously with some guidance, if a child says, oh, this is hurting, ask them, why is it hurting, and so on. But I think allowing them the freedom, as you said, it sounds absolutely brilliant. I think the way you said that is bang on. And as you mentioned, if you can just remind us again that the 2K parkruns are every Sunday morning.
Yeah, so we kind of relaunched Junior Parkrun in 2013. So there were a few events going before then, a handful of events, but we relaunched it properly in 2013. And now I think we've got about 300 and, off the top of my head, 350 Junior Parkrun events around the UK. So there's probably one near you if you're listening to this. And the reason why we did that, for a couple of reasons. And you know, we all know, certainly if you're involved in parkrun, we all know loads of 4, 5, 6-year-olds who are really, really perfectly happy and capable doing 5K every week. And that's absolutely fine. If they're enjoying it, like I say, there is absolutely not one single shred of evidence that children running 5K every single once a week, every week on any surface, there's no evidence that's bad for them whatsoever. I mean, there really isn't. I challenge people all the time to provide it, and nobody ever has. I've never found any. But for lots of children, that is too far. And again, I'm thinking more they're saying it's too far. So they don't enjoy it. They get bored. They want to do something else. It's freezing cold. It's miserable. They've got short attention spans. And so actually, as we matured as an organization, so in 2013, we were 9 years old, so we were growing up as an organization, we realized actually there's something here we need to do something a little bit more attainable for the younger children. We also saw that being active together as a family is really, really important. Like, to be able to do something together is critical. And actually, most families with a super fit 9-year-old who can run 5K in 21 minutes, the mum and dad can't keep up, and the younger sibling can't keep up. And so it doesn't really, you're not doing something together. And so what we thought was, actually, if we reduce the distance and we make it more achievable, we will attempt to also engage the less active, less fit adults with the children. And we purposefully don't record the adults' attendance, because we want to kind of trick them into taking part in a 2K walk stroke run without realizing, because we think they'd be turned off if they realized they were doing it. And so the idea was, and this is absolutely borne out in not only our anecdotal experience, but the research that we do alongside it internally, is we get 4 and 5-year-olds, and almost every 4 or 5-year-old is certainly almost every 4-year-old is a natural runner and is fit and healthy. I mean, I know there's health inequalities, but it's remarkable. You look at 4-year-olds being active, in the school playground or something, they're incredible. They don't walk anywhere, they run everywhere. And if you run everywhere, photos of them, they look like these amazing, beautiful runners. Society beats it out over them over time, unfortunately. So what we see is these young 4, 5, 6-year-olds, in vast majority of cases, getting a real joy for being active, chatting to each other, messing around in the park, playing. And then we see these really, really unfit and unhealthy adult parents running with them, and it's wonderful. I mean, my local junior park run is 4.5 years old now, and so we've seen some of these 4, 5-year-olds. They're now 8 or 9. They were pretty fit. They stayed fit. They've got a bit quicker, and we see their parents like huffing and puffing and having to start to train to keep up with their 8-year-old. But of course, little does the parent realize that their 8-year-old has now done 100 junior park runs, and they've done 100 junior park runs, and they don't even know it. But they're fit, and you see the parents transforming in front of your eyes over the years, because their children are taking them on this journey, and then you see them gradually, the parents dipping their toe into a 5K and all that kind of thing. And so I think for us, we felt that although many families can participate together over 5K, many families, particularly the families most in need of physical activity and socializing and so on, they couldn't participate together over 5K. And junior park run, so 2Ks on exactly the same barcode, registered the same way, completely free every single week, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, all of that stuff. But providing that more accessible thing has seen these families engage together, and it's I mean, it's a joy to behold. It's you see it, and we know from our research, we have, I think in the UK, off the top of my head, I think we have about 20,000 kids take part on a Sunday. I get confused with the number sometimes. I think we have about 20,000 kids take part on a Sunday. Alongside them, we'll have 45 adults. We know this because we have counted them, or we do count them fairly regularly. We'll have 45 adults walking or running 2K with the children. We'll have 45 adults spectating, and that's hugely valuable. They're stood in the park, they're getting the fresh air, they're smiling, they're laughing, they're joking, they're being active. And we see about 25 adults volunteering. So we get about 115 adults being active, remembering the important definition of being active, being moving of any sort, being social and being outside. We see about 115 adults being active every Sunday morning alongside each 100 kids. So for every 20,000 children we have taking part, we have, 23,000, if my math is right, 23,000 adults taking part without knowing they're taking part, because exercise has become such a toxic word has become such a, we are for some reason people assume you should not like it. And so you've got these 23,000 adults moving, being outside, being social, smiling, laughing, joking without realizing it. So it's wonderful.
I tell you, it's absolutely. I think we could talk for hours and hours, Tom, on this topic, because there's so many spin-offs on it. Obviously, we've got to have you back on and talk at maybe some of those other topics. Sure. But the key thing, I think, for everyone who's listening, watching, is do enjoy it, whatever the distance, wherever you go. Just get out and about and enjoy the activity as a group or not as a group. And what I love, as you say, the junior parkrun, and the kids love it, and I can only speak from first-hand experience with my two, is that they love to do their own thing, and there's nothing more empowering than just letting a kid run free, and pun was intended there. Just let them run free and they run naturally. And as you said, often as we get older, it gets beaten out of us. But when you see young children, they just running free flowing, almost like the way Eliud Kipchoge ran his sub-2. It's just like poetry in motion. When you see children running, it's organic, it's natural, it's like poetry in motion, and it is. It's fantastic. So, if you love it, do it. But thank you so much for your time, Tom, coming on the show here and talking to us. It's an absolute honor and a privilege having you and what you guys do with Parkrun, and how you're helping not just the children and adults, but everyone all over the world. I've even done my Z in Poland only the other month.
Oh, you're better than me. I've not got a Z yet.
I was, it was a long story, but I'll do that once recorded. But thank you so much, Tom, for coming on, and have a great day, and we'll speak soon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.